Good morning, dear children. Hope you are all doing well in God's grace. Well, today we are going to start a new lesson in geography, Lithosphere-II. Children, last class we have seen about Lithosphere-I, that is with the endogenetic processes. That is, which focused on the internal processes of the earth. The earth is the dynamic system that undergoes various changes due to internal and external processes. Isn't it? Okay. Just recall the geomorphic processes. That are the two processes, internal and external processes. The very first one, just recall, the very first one is internal processes or endogenetic processes. The force that acts from the Earth's interior is endogenetic process. External or exogenetic processes is the force acts on the surface of the Earth. So today we are going to see about this exogenetic processes. What were the exogenetic processes? We have two types in that, weathering and mass movement, and the other one is gradation. In turn, the weathering have been divided into three types, that is physical weathering, chemical weathering and biological weathering. Today we are going to see this weathering, okay? And in other turn, gradation have been divided into two, which is degradation and aggradation. What do you mean by weathering? Weathering is a process of breaking down and building up. What do you mean by breaking down and building up? Here we talk about the Earth's outer surface, especially with the rocks, the types of rocks, okay? The weathering is breaking and disintegration and decomposition of materials of the Earth's crust by the exposure due to the climatical changes or chemical or physical changes, it's like that. And also the exposure to atmosphere. We have three types of weathering over here. One is physical weathering, the next is chemical weathering, and the third one is biological weathering. Let's see in detail about these three types of weathering. The first one is physical weathering. It's a breakdown of rocks without changing their chemical composition through the action of physical factors. Okay? So, due to constant freezing and thawing of rocks during the day and night, that is throughout the day, it's a continuous process which leads to expansion and contraction. So what do you mean by expanding and contraction? The rocks, due to these weathering, it was being expanded and breakdown, and also due to physical, the other means of physical weathering, it gets contracted, gets closed, tightened up, and it breaks down. This is what is physical weathering. So the cracks that are formed and disintegrate occurs eventually. Here we are going to see about the other types of physical weathering, that is exfoliation, granular disintegration and block disintegration. Okay? Just remember the divisions and the points that what I am saying. Look into the slides also. have it in your mind, learn properly. Okay, children, this is one of the detailed answer. So listen carefully to the lesson. The first one we are going to see is exfoliation in physical weathering. The alternate of heating and cooling on the round rock surface leads to a peeling of rocks. What do you mean by peeling? You might have heard this word in peeling of onion. Have you got it? Layer by layer. So this exfoliation also says about peeling of rocks, not the onion, rocks. So this breaks the rock into pieces. This is called as exfoliation. It is also other forms we are going to see is sheeting and shattering. Okay, sheeting, shattering, that is division, dividing into pieces. That is what is exfoliation. When you are about to write this answer, you can write it according to the points. Okay, children. The next division in physical weathering, granular disintegration. This disintegration or this breaking down process takes place in crystalline rocks. Do you know with the meaning granular, that is grains, tiny pieces of rocks which becomes loose and falls out. Okay, just see to the slide. Which takes place only in crystalline rocks, and the grains of rocks become loose and fall out. This is due to the action of temperature, that is due to the climatic changes, hot or cold. The third type in physical weathering is block disintegration. With the word itself you can be able to recognize that the rock has been divided into blocks. Okay, this has happened due to the expansion and contraction on the rocks throughout the day. So it causes stress to the joints and which result into pieces, that is blocks of rocks. Okay, break down into blocks of rocks. This is what is block disintegration. So what were the three division of physical weathering? The first one is exfoliation, the next one is granular disintegration, and the third one is block disintegration. Here let's see some of the pictures about the physical weathering. The first one we have seen is exfoliation. Just look into the picture, how it has been peeled out. Can you be able to recall the lesson what I have taught you? Yes, peeling off rocks layer by layer, it gets disintegrated and comes down. The granular disintegration is with the tiny granules, that is grains of pieces. And the third one with the block disintegration, you can see the picture with the blocks, it gets disintegrated and breaks down. So in weathering, we are going to move on to the next weathering, that is chemical weathering. This has been occurred or caused by the disintegration and decomposition of rocks due to the chemical reactions. What do that chemical reaction takes place in this chemical weathering? It is said that due to the oxidation, carbonation, solution and hydration, the chemical weathering occurs. Okay, These were the types of weathering also. This has been predominantly seen in hot and humid regions such as equatorial, tropical and subtropical zones. So the agents of chemical weathering is oxygen, carbon dioxide, hydrogen and water. What were the agents of chemical weathering? Oxygen, carbon dioxide, hydrogen and water. Due to the chemical reaction that takes place on the rocks, this disintegration occurs. We'll move on to the first type or the types of chemical weathering. Oxidation. The next one is carbonation, dissolution and hydration. Oxidation. Oxygen in the atmosphere reacts with the iron found in the rocks. You know that oxygen surrounds us, isn't it? Which leads to iron oxide. So, iron in the rock and the oxygen in the atmosphere both gets reacted to form iron oxide. This leads to the process of rusting of iron, pressure of air and water, thus resulted in the weakening of rocks. Through the weakening of rocks, weak down the rocks, the oxidation takes place through the oxygen with iron. Thus, the rocks breaks down. Look into the picture. The oxidation. You can see the rusting of iron over on the rocks, on the outer layer of rocks. So, slow by slow, it just disintegrates, breaks down. Okay. The next one we are going to see is carbonation. Carbonation is the mixture of water with the atmospheric carbon dioxide, which forms carbonic acid. This carbonic acid reacts with the carbonate on the rocks that has been on the rocks and makes the rocks disintegrate. So this carbonation is very much important and needed for the formation of caves in the limestone region. So wherever you see rocks, we can able to recall that carbonation is a process that has been occurred over there. Okay, look into the picture over there. Carbonation, which is the second form of chemical weathering. Okay, children, we'll move on to the third reaction in the chemical weathering. The third one is solution, that is dissolution. The dissolution of rock substance in water result in the loosening of rock particles. So since it loosens the rock particles, it breaks down from the mother rock and get into pieces. This is what is the third form of chemical weathering. We'll see to the picture of dissolution of rocks. The limestone and the rocks high in salt, which dissolves when exposed to water. You know very well, the salt gets dissolved in water. So when it has been found on the rocks, during the climatic changes in the occurs or by the flood or by the rainy season, the water that makes the salt and the limestone dissolves. Hydrolysis minerals in the rock react with water and with the surrounding acid, and look into the picture how it has been made the rocks dissolve slow by slow. It has been made some holes and then finally break down into pieces. We'll move on to the fourth division in the chemical weathering, that is hydration. Absorption of water into the mineral. Certain chemical reaction in the rock enlarges the rock size in humid condition. Thus, it results in swelling of rocks. When do you get swelling, children? When you fall down or just hit anywhere, the swelling happens, isn't it? But here for the rocks, due to the hydration, the chemical reaction has been making the rock swells, and in course of time this swellings started to break down. When it expands, it breaks down. This is what is hydration. We'll look into the picture. Hydration of rocks. Okay. So one instant of hydration occurs as a mineral, a hydrite reacts with groundwater. In many rocks, for example, sodium minerals interact with water to form a saltwater solution. Thus, the hydration of rocks occurs due to the chemical reaction. So this is the final type of chemical weathering. We are moving on to the third type of weathering, that is biological weathering. Biological weathering occurs due to the penetration and expansion of certain things. What were the certain things? How do it gets penetrated? You know very well, plant roots. It penetrates into rocks to get water for its growth. The next one is earthworms. You know how the earthworm penetrates into soil. You can annoy how the earthworm into the rocks. It's a type of earthworm. The next one is burrowing of animals. It burrows, makes a hole on the rock, into the rock, and go deep into the rock, which in course of time, due to the climatical changes, hot and cold, due to the temperature variation, the water gets enter into the rocks, into the burrows, and get the rocks divided, disintegrated, or break down. Not only with these, and also we have some of the human activities. They also make the rock break down into pieces. This is what is the biological weathering. Let's see the picture of biological weathering. Okay, see just to the very first slide, you can see how the root has been penetrated into the rock, the mountain, and it breaks down or makes a division. The next one, you can see the root from the rock, top of the rock, and penetrates to the soil of the earth. Over to the third one also you can see. So likewise, the biological weathering occurs on the rock, which break down the rock and gives the granules, or through which the sand has been formed. Okay children, we end today's session with the homework. The very first homework is, I have given you the short answer. What do you mean by weathering with the types? The second one, biological weathering. And the third one, you have give reasons. Okay. The very first, give reason. And the fourth one is your detailed answer. explain in detail the classification of weathering. You can look into the slides and you can write according to the points, and the detailed answer will get into subheadings with the points. Okay children, learn and write all the 4 answers. Post it between 5 to 6. This I am saying you again and again. I don't know why you children were posting from the morning itself. Well, I encourage, but even still I say you keep up the timing. Thus we end. We'll look into the next session. Thank you.